Hi everyone and welcome back to Theology. Now today I'd like to talk about how I made the decision to do the topic that I'm doing for my PhD. I'm talking about this today because it wasn't an easy decision to make. Now that I'm here and I've started my research, I've started to do those little components that come together to put together the final piece of work that I will have ready in years to come. It's an important thing, I think, to revisit and just to explain to you how I got to the final stage when I submitted my proposal. Now, for some people, they'll do something like a master's degree and they will have the thought in mind at the time that they will do a PhD. There are people who, while they're doing their degree, know that this is something that they intend to do. And so throughout their studies, they're already thinking about an area where they will specialise. They already have an idea that they will study for a number of years and that they would like a career in academia. I can't say that that was my thoughts because it just wasn't. It just was not there in my thinking at all. I didn't have the language of academia to be able to put the sentences together to say that this was where I was going to go. So what happened to me was that while I was doing my master's degree, people that were my lecturers asked me the question, had I considered doing a PhD? Because they asked me the question, I started to think about whether or not it was possible. And the circumstances of my life meant that yes, it was possible for me to make this decision to pursue a PhD. Now, having made the decision because of my personal circumstances allowing me to do this, I will do another video that explains things, the other challenges that come into play, things like how to deal with your finances. That's an issue. Things like how to deal with issues within your family, because while you're doing a PhD, your family are going to be impacted by the work that you're doing as well. It impacts on all the people around you, people that you care about. It has an impact. So what happened to me was, yes, I graduated with an MA. And after graduation, having the conversations, I did start to think, yeah, I've got an idea for something that I would like to do. So I had a conversation with a potential supervisor at the theological college that I attended. And it was a great conversation. We discussed lots of different ideas and she became a critical friend, if you like. She asked me some challenging questions that made me go back and think about the topics that were on my list. And so what I did after I came home, had a look at the notes that I made, I isolated, if you like, 3 or 4 ideas. And the idea that I really wanted to do, I looked at and I thought, it's going to be too hard. It was going to cross over into biblical studies as well as practical theology. And because of the overlap and because of conversations that I had with other lecturers about the degree of knowledge and specialism that I would need for this overlap, I just didn't think I could do it. So I pushed it to one side. And what I continued to do then was to pursue another idea that I thought was more manageable. And I tried to put together a proposal that was about prayer, because what I wanted to do was analyse. I thought I could look at what was being prayed in certain churches and maybe map out what was going on in the prayer life of a community of believers and whether or not specific prayers were being prayed for the community, the geographical area that these congregations served, and whether there was evidence of change in a congregation that could be tied to the prayers of the people within the church. And I thought that was a really good idea. And the more that I tried to work out how I could do that, the more impossible it looked. But I put a proposal together and it didn't get past first base, if you like. And the more that I thought about it and the implications for trying to gather an understanding of everything else that comes into play in a community that I couldn't measure, I put that to one side. So I worked 3-4 months on that proposal and then put it to one side, never used it. Then my second proposal was closer to my heart because it was looking specifically at women and leadership within my new denomination. By then I was within the Assemblies of God denomination, and I thought I could do a project that looked at leadership, that looked specifically at women and their progress to a more senior level within the organisation of the Assemblies of God. And although, again, that interested me, and I found other scholars who were doing similar work, I submitted a proposal by the summer of that year. And the next day after submitting that proposal, I just changed my mind. I suddenly thought, you know what? I don't want to spend 3-4 years talking about that topic. I just don't want to do it. There was, I don't know, for some reason, it just suddenly started to feel really negative, and I just didn't want to get into that space. I just didn't want to have 3 or 4 years of looking at things that were going wrong. And I just suddenly got, just didn't feel, just stopped feeling it. So I withdrew the proposal, had the summer off, did nothing. And then by the time we got back to September, so this is a whole year of writing proposals, a year of sitting in some additional classes so that I could think about other things and what I wanted to do. And what I did then was I went back to my notes and I went back to the first proposal. Not the first proposal, the proposal that was on the list, that the idea that was on the list that didn't become a proposal. And I started to think about this original idea that I had that was shaped around the encounters that Jesus has with women in John's Gospel and how those women shape our understanding of what it is to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. I looked at composite models of discipleship. I looked at what they looked like, and they came from different Gospels, nothing looking at the Gospel of John. So that was where I decided to go with my new proposal. I also realised that there was most of the writing about discipleship and about the relationship of Jesus with female disciples was starting to come through. A lot of more women were writing, but most discipleship conversations were being had around the men who followed Jesus, and where there were conversations about women's relationship with Jesus, they tended to talk about women as being less important than the men. So I'm still working through unpicking what is going on there. But that is a general sort of idea of where I wanted to work. I decided then that rather than just rake over the same old ground of, what do ordinary everyday people say about discipleship, I decided to think about what women like me, so I am second generation Windrush descendant. Sometimes I call myself third generation because my parents came here when they were kids. Whatever I am, I was born in Manchester and raised in Manchester, went to local primary, local comprehensive schools, and my education background, all of my formal education has taken place within the city of Manchester. So I am Mancunian born and bred thoroughly. And although that's the case, I wanted to ask women who shared a similar experience maybe to me, what they thought it was like, what they experienced as Christian women living, growing up as Christians in today's society in England. What is it like for them? What conversations have people had with them about what it is to be a disciple? How would they describe their relationship with God, their relationship with Jesus? What language would they use? How do they talk about their relationship with God? Because what I noticed for myself was there seemed to be some cultural differences in how I expressed myself and other people expressed themselves. And I wasn't sure whether it was cultural, because I grew up in the UK and I wasn't brought up in a Christian home, or whether it was coming from somewhere else. I just couldn't quite put my finger on what it was that was different. My perception of faith and my perception of my walk with God just seemed to be different to what I was experiencing in the churches that I attended. And most of the churches that I have attended, let's be honest, all of the churches that I've attended since I've been a Christian, since I've been married as a Christian, have been white-led churches, predominantly white congregations where we are the one black family or one of a couple of black families in the church. And I just wanted to dig a bit more deeply into what that means, if anything at all. So I've gone the long way round to talking about how I came to settle on this particular idea for a project, and that is what I'm working on for my PhD. And what I want to wrap up with, having taken this long to tell the story, are the things that I think you should consider if you are thinking of doing a PhD. These are the things that I think you should consider. Will your idea for a project sustain you for a number of years? You can't pick a project that is going to annoy you and bore you within a few months, because it has to sustain you for a long time. And so I'm really glad that I ditched 2 projects, because this project, I know I've got my heart invested in the outcome, and I know I've got what it takes to be sustained to fulfill the whole project. Do you have the right support around you? That's the second thing. Because although you will do the work on your own, it's your project, you will lead the project, you are the lead researcher in the work. I think it's important to have other people around you that are going to support you, that are going to make you the odd cup of tea, that are going to say, keep going, that are going to say, yes, you can do this. Do you have anybody cheering you on that can support you? Because there will be times, I haven't hit them yet, to be honest, I'm in my first year, but I'm sure there will be times where I need somebody to encourage me and to cheer me on. Do you have that network? And in terms of a supervisory team, have you got people around you who are really going to help you? So that's another aspect of doing a PhD, choosing the right team to be around you, to ask you challenging questions, to have conversations with you about your work that help you to have good quality outcomes in this particular project that you've decided to work on. Now, when I was trying to decide whether to do a PhD, I had a few conversations with students who'd come to the end of their PhD. And 2 of them actually said to me, which disturbed me slightly at the time, and I always value people who tell me the truth and don't try to butter things up. I've got very thick skin. I've had horrible things said to me throughout my life, and I'm still here. I'm a survivor. That's just who I am. But I've had people say to me, as I was embarking on this, if you can do something else, do the something else. Don't choose to do a PhD unless you really sense it's something that you have to do, because it's the hardest thing that you will ever do. That was said to me by two people. So I thought, oh, they're trying to put me off. But okay, I'll take it. One of them said to me something like, it almost drove them to a state where they felt like they were on the verge of going crazy, if you like. I think there was one person who said there came a point where they could almost see the words of their dissertation on the inside of their eyeballs, something like that. And these are people who came through the other side who were successful. But what they were trying to communicate to me was that it's difficult. It's really, really hard. And so you have to be ready for the fight that's ahead of you. It's a lot of hard work. So I think the most important thing is working out what it is that you are really interested in. And for me, I sense that the topic that I'm working on, in some respects, I feel like it's chosen me. I don't want to be over super spiritual about this. I sense that if I don't write it, I don't know who else is going to write it. And my work is not about serving me. It's not about doing something for me. I believe my work is about serving the church. I'm hoping that it will be an important piece of work for the church moving forward. I think there's something to learn from different people's experiences of how they live out their faith. And I want to be able to capture that and use that knowledge to share with other people what it is that makes my experience of following Jesus in the UK, living with the fabric, if you like, of a brown skin, with the cultural heritage that goes back to the West Indies, with an upbringing where I experienced parts of my culture at home and in my social life growing up, and the majority of what I learned about English culture outside of the home. All of those worlds blended together in a cultural mix, again, within the church experience, is an interesting one. So if you'd like to come on that journey with me, this is where we're going for the next few years. We're going to be putting this project together, and it will form itself into some kind of a book, an academic book, I hope. And along the way, I think there will be other projects that come alongside what I'm trying to do with this work. So this is the PhD side of theology. It's the PhD side in terms of what I'm researching, the work that I'm going to be doing. So there'll be a separate section within my YouTube channel that is solely based on what I'm doing with respect to the PhD, because it's a very large part of my life. So today, spend some time thinking about your topic. Somebody very senior said to me, because I was worried about my academic ability and whether or not I would have to have the ability to get through to the end of the project. And he talked to me about the ability to keep going is far more important, Fiona. The fact that you start and other people think you can do it, if you can keep going, you'll get the PhD. So you watch this space. Hopefully you'll be with me over the next 3 to 5 years, maybe 6 years, to see the end of the project and Fiona Taylor with a PhD. So this is it for today. This is Fiona signing out from Theology, and I'll see you again soon.